Folks, and welcome back to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen, and this week we continue our retrospective of the beloved horror franchise, Halloween. And this time we take a look back at Halloween H20, with the glorious return of Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. Also starring young up-and-comers Josh Hartnett and Michelle Williams, and LL Cool J. And also a couple nice little cameos like Nancy Stevens returning in the role of Nurse Marion Chambers from the original two films, which is a nice little touch, I thought. She's still smoking after all these years. And also a nice little cameo by Jamie Lee Curtis' mother, Janet Leigh, and a kind of a little nod to Psycho there, which many people say highly influenced Halloween, which is hard to argue. And so, Halloween H20 takes place 20 years later after the original two films. Yes, they decided to ignore parts 4, 5, and 6. Which kind of always bothered me personally because I wish they had made some kind of mention of it, at least in passing. But they chose to ignore them because, the last, like, 5 and 6 didn't really do very well at the box office. And, they just wanted to kind of look at this film as a celebration of Halloween and the original film and the sequel. And where they brought Jamie Lee Curtis back, they kind of didn't really want to continue that storyline from 4, 5, and 6 for whatever reasons. They chose to ignore them. So, how this story goes is it's 20 years later, and Laurie Strode is trying to move on with her life, and she's changed her name because she doesn't want to be known as sister of the maniacal serial killer Michael Myers. She wants trying to move away from that. Doesn't want. She's moved to a different town, and she's head mistress of this private school, which her son also attends, played by Josh Hartnett, and his girlfriend is played by Michelle Williams, respectively, and they do a fine job. So Jamie Lee Curtis is still traumatized, however, by the legacy of Michael Myers and the horror of realizing that this maniacal serial killer is actually her brother, and all the hell that he put her through, is still going through her mind, and she's having nightmares constantly. She's traumatized. She's resorted to drinking a lot. She's a heavy drinker, and it's caused her a lot of psychological hell. And we do see that in the film. We also, at the beginning, I have to mention the opening credits is a homage to Dr. Loomis, played by, with great gusto, by the great legendary Donald Pleasance in the first two films. Since he passed away, unfortunately, we didn't get to see him in the film. But they did a nice little nod to him in the opening credits with the blackest eye speech, the devil's eyes. Classic line, my favorite line in probably the history of horror films, I would say. I love that line. And so they paid homage to Donald Pleasance, and I thought that was nice. So what happens in the film is 20 years later after the original, Michael Myers decides to pay a little holiday visit. 20 years later. He wants to return to finish the job he started 20 years ago. He wants to get Laurie Strode once and for all because he finds out somehow where she is. It only took him 20 years, but he got there. He gets there. And we have it's Halloween time, and we have a new holiday mayhem with Michael Myers coming back and terrorizing this school and terrorizing Laurie Strode once again, and terrorizing her son and his girlfriend, and everyone gets in his way, murdering them one by one in classic Halloween fashion. Um, like I said, also stars LL Cool J. I thought it was kind of silly bringing him into it, but whatever. He doesn't bother me too bad in the movie. He does a decent job actually, so he doesn't really take away from anything. But I thought it was kind of an attempt to make Halloween franchise more hip and up to date. Um, at that time, there was the resurgence of slasher films caused by Scream, Wes Craven's Scream franchise, and I felt that this film definitely played to that audience. It was definitely kind of in the style of the Scream franchise and movies like that, like I Know What You Did Last Summer and things like that. Definitely has that kind of feel to it, which in some ways kind of derails it a little bit because it doesn't. In some ways, it doesn't really feel like part of the Halloween franchise. It feels more like a Scream type movie, but um, but it does follow the story of the original two films. It does pay homage to it, so it's almost like a cross between Halloween and Scream. Definitely has that feel to it. I feel anyway. I don't know about what you guys feel, but that's what I feel. Um, but I do enjoy the film. It is a nice return to form after the atrocity of Part 6. I didn't care for that at all. The Curse of Michael Myers was the sixth entry, and it kind of went off the rails, delving into this idea that Michael Myers was part of a cult, and that's why he is the way he is, and trying to give a backstory of why Michael does what he does, and it was very ambitious, but the execution was terrible, and it had pathetic acting, and the movie pretty much bombed, and it was just a bad movie. Period. There was no saving it. Even the late great Donald Pleasance couldn't save this movie. But so it was a nice return to form for the franchise Halloween H2O, and it was great having Jamie Lee Curtis back as Laurie Strode. She does an excellent job, and she really makes the movie worthwhile. And she has another great performance as Laurie Strode, still running away from Michael Myers, but this time she seems a lot stronger, as she may be traumatized by the events of the original two films, and finding out that she's Michael Myers' brother. But in the end, she decides, I'm not going to let this man take out me or my family. This time, I'm not going to let it happen. So she really takes on Michael big time in this film. And that's what I really like about it. They really go at it. And to what seems like a final showdown, between Laurie and Michael. But it didn't exactly turn out that way, but it feels that way. That's because there was a film after this entry that a lot of fans do not like, including myself, and it's probably the most critically trashed, the most trashed by fans, and the most hated, and that's Halloween Resurrection, which was unfortunately directed by Rick Rosenthal, who directed the great Halloween 2, but he did not do such a good job in Resurrection. I'm sorry. Sorry, folks. But here, this is a very nice sequel, even though it's very Screamish in presentation. It is a nice, solid entry in the franchise, and it was a hit at the box office. It was a big hit. So that was great. It was great to see that Halloween is back and in the spotlight again, and Michael Myers is back doing what he does best, and that's killing mothers. And that's what we love. And Michael Myers is there's also a weird thing about his mask in this film, as they went, apparently the mask took on a life of its own. They couldn't get it to look like the original film, so they kept trying all these different versions of the mask, and several different versions are used in the actual film, including a CGI version of the mask. I don't know what they were thinking there, but you can see it in the film, and it's kind of making me cringe a little bit. I'm sorry to say, but it isn't too bad overall, the masks that end up on the finished film. But you do see the differences in certain scenes, that it's not the same mask in every scene. And the actor who played Michael Myers was a stuntman. I didn't think he was quite as good as some of the Michael Myers of the past, like Dick Warlock or Nick Castle, but he did an okay job. Um, Nothing to stand out as bad or anything. Um, so, running by Halloween H20, a nice entry into the franchise and a great resurgence of the Halloween legacy, and a worthy entry. Halloween H20, 20 years later. Thank you for joining me again. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen, and welcome back to the Horror Corner. So tune in and stay scared. See you next time, folks.